What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. Now we have that boring World Cup out of the way, we can finally start focusing on the more important things, and that is the Game Week 17 deadline, which is just a week away. So in this video, I thought I would take you through how my latest draft is looking. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's jump into it. Now I am back on the Ward and Everson combination because it's just so cheap, and I've only got 0.1 million in the bank. Now one team that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on over the next week for injury news, fitness news, and general availability is Chelsea, because if Kepa is fit and available, and I do think from what we've seen from Graham Potter so far, Kepa is ahead of Mendy in the pecking order for goalkeepers at Chelsea, 4.5 million is probably going to be too good to turn down. Now, Danny Ward is going to be nailed in my squad no matter what. He's either going to be the main goalkeeper or he's a playing option on the bench that I can call upon when needed. So I would have to do Everson to Kepa, and he was 3.9 million, so I got 0.1 in the bag. I need to find 0.5 million from somewhere if I want to keep the rest of the squad how it is to get Kepa. They are really the only goalkeeper combinations that I'm considering. I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people. It's either going to be Ward and Everson or it's going to be Ward and Kepa. I don't want to pay, I don't really want Leno, even though Fulham have got a double game week. I don't want to pay the extra money for Ramsdale, for Pope or Edison or Allison or anyone like that. So they are the combinations that I'm looking at. So I'll come on to where I could find that 0.5 million in a minute. Reece James will probably not be a player that I downgrade. As long as he's fit and available, he's almost, I would say, 100% locked into my squad, a bit like Danny Ward. I just think the fixtures for Chelsea are too good to turn down, and they've got that double game week. He's less than 6 million. We know that he can output similar to a Cancelo, to a Trent or someone like that when he's at his absolute best, and I know it hasn't really gone for him so far this season. But if he's fit and available, I just cannot turn that down. I know we've all seen that video of him in training where he does that little turn, then he scores the goal, and he does look fit, right? But I guess training photos and videos don't necessarily tell us everything. So we need to hear from Graham Potter. But I have talked about on a few other videos that Chelsea's rest periods over the kind of Christmas period are pretty good, right? So they play Tuesday the 27th, so they're not even back straight away on the 26th. Then they don't play again until Sunday, and they don't play again after that until Thursday. So Tuesday, Sunday, Thursday turnaround is pretty nice. If you think some teams in Europe do like Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, or they do like Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, this is a bit kinder. So if he is fit and available for that first game, and there's no reoccurrences of injuries or anything like that, I think there's an outside chance that he starts all three of those games, even if he doesn't make it to 90 minutes each time. And at the very least, he should start at least two of them, and I think that is just worth the risk. And this game against Man City on the 5th of January, he doesn't then play again until the 12th. He may play in the FA Cup, which is between those fixtures, which is also against Man City. And if he does, there is doubt about whether he would play both games in the double. But again, I think it's worth that risk. And because not every team has a double game week in the same game week. There's only Chelsea and Fulham in game week 19. I don't think it's the end of the world if he doesn't play both of those games, because outside of that, the fixtures are good enough to warrant his inclusion anyway. So I think Reece James is pretty much 100% locked in the squad. It's not the same situation for Cancelo, mostly because of the price. I'd say he's like 80 to 90% locked. I do want a Man City defender, and he is probably the most nailed on one. Obviously, he can be attacking as well, but he is quite an expensive price. And also, one thing that I should have mentioned in other videos, that double game week for Man City in game week 20 is not guaranteed. So if we come over to the FPL page, Cancelo is now 7.4 million. I can sell him for 7.2. So if I did want to get him back, and he is over 50% owned, which is kind of mad, it would cost me a little bit more. So I think I probably will keep Cancelo, but he's not 100% a lot. But just to come onto the fixtures, in game week 20, they play Man United away and then Spurs at home. But if Man City or Spurs are involved in a FA Cup third round replay, this fixture won't happen. It will get postponed again, and it will get put into a different game week later on. Now, for Spurs, they play Portsmouth in the FA Cup, so they're going to be strong favourites for that. They should go through. But for Man City, they're playing Chelsea, right? So if that is a draw and they have to play again and this match gets called off, I know that Spurs at home shouldn't make a massive difference to our thoughts about Man City players, but it kind of does for me a little bit. Because if we just pretend that that game is off for a second, okay, Leeds away and Everton at home are pretty good, but then it's Chelsea away, then it's Man United away, and again, don't get me wrong, I'm sure Man City will beat Man United, but for a clean sheet perspective, it's not great for Cancelo, that fixture. And then it's Spurs away. So Spurs away, Man United away, Chelsea away. You know, okay, they've got Wolves at home, Leeds and Everton, but it just doesn't quite look as good if that double game week doesn't happen. For what it's worth, I think I will probably stick with Cancelo because, you know, if Chelsea or Man City just go through and they win that game and obviously Spurs win theirs, then there'll be a double game week anyway, so I'd want Cancelo. And if there isn't, I could always swap into any other defender pretty much that I want. So he probably will be in my side, but that is one way I could drop 0.5 million out of this squad to get Kepa in instead. Trippier is the other player that I would consider doing that for. Now, I know people are kind of screaming at the screen, there's no way you can go without Trippier, but I picked him up a lot cheaper than other people, so I don't have as much money wrapped up in him. And look, the Newcastle fixtures are pretty good, and he's been super consistent, so he's not a player that I would want to drop. But there's not a huge amount of other ways to get 0.5 million. Like, even if I drop Dalot, he's 4.8, so I'd have to get a defender that's 4.3 or less. And I don't think there's a huge amount of options. Just quickly on Dalot himself, it's also not ideal to have to bench him for Nottingham Forest at home, but I just don't see who I bench out of Trippier, Cancelo or James. So in that case, I'm already questioning whether it's even worth having him, because Man United for the first 5 game weeks back have got 3 nice fixtures, but they're in 17, 18 and 19. So if I'm benching Dalot for one of those, I don't know whether I need him in my squad completely. So that's something that I'll think about. But just coming back to Trippier, if I go onto list view, like I bought him and then I bought him late, then sold him, then had to buy him back for even more money. So I've actually paid 5.6 million for Trippier. A lot of you would have bought him for 5 million. If that's the case, there's no reason to get rid of him whatsoever. But for me, I can sell him for 5.7 and it would cost me 0.2 million more to get him back. Obviously, if he continues to do well and his price continues to go up, I'd have to pay even more. But that's the situation as it stands. Like I said, I think Newcastle's fixtures are pretty good, although I think in the first 3 game weeks, Leicester could definitely score, Arsenal could definitely score as well. But Leeds, Fulham, Crystal Palace, West Ham, Bournemouth, they're all really nice fixtures for Trippier. So I think he'll probably be in the team, but I just don't. I'm not 100% sure about him. I think he's a great pick for what it's worth. I just think if I'm thinking about locked-in players, it's probably Ward and Reece James, and that is it for my defence. I think I probably will end up with Cancelo or Trippier, but I'm at least thinking about it. For most of you, it's just, I've got to have Trippier. He's been too consistent. I wouldn't want to go without him. That's not necessarily the case for me. And then my other defender is Botman, just because the Newcastle defence has been pretty good, right? 4th best, expected goals conceded, etc. You've heard me say that already. He's a cheap price. He's pretty much nailed on. It just seems like a good backup option on the bench. Obviously, I'm mostly going to play the 3 that I have anyway. So that's how the defenders and goalkeepers currently stand. Let's look at midfielders. So I'll be honest, I'm finding it difficult to completely let go of Martinelli. I've had him since the start of the season. He's returned pretty well. He's just been excellent value, and I wonder if that will continue over the next 5 to 6 game weeks, even with the fixtures that Arsenal have. Like, if we look at the FPL page, so I bought him at 6 million. He's gone up to 6.8 million. So if I sell him, I get 6.4 million back, and that's fine. If I don't want to buy him back, I just bank that money. But if I do want to get him back, or if I realise that I've made a mistake, it's going to cost me at least 0.4 million, possibly even more, because if he continues to deliver in harder fixtures, people will just bring him in anyway. So I am a little bit concerned about that, and I know what people will say. It's all about points. Team value only matters to a certain extent. You know, the game is simple. If you think that someone else will score more points than Martinelli for a similar or the same price, you should get them instead. But that's where the problem lies. I don't know how confident I am to make that decision. I don't know if there's someone out there that will be better than him. Take Rashford, for example, who's actually in my squad. But if it's a toss-up between Martinelli and Rashford, am I 100% confident that over 5 to 6 game weeks Rashford wins out? I'm not sure I am. He probably does for the next 2 to 3 game weeks, but we got to think a little bit longer term than that. And if Arsenal can produce, like I said, anywhere near the numbers they have so far this season, despite having West Ham at home, Brighton away, Newcastle at home, Spurs away, they will cause those teams problems. And I know GW17 might be missing for some or even all of that, but I don't think they're going to suddenly become this really bad team. So I'm finding it hard to give up that value that I have in Martinelli. And as it stands, he is still in the draft. So is Mason Mount. He was in the last draft as well. That is all of fixtures and double game week play. I think that position could be, with a little bit of downgrading elsewhere, that could be a Saka, it could be Kulusevski, it could be Phil Foden, for example. But right now it's Mason Mount. I don't know how long term of a pick that is really, because attacking-wise, Chelsea haven't necessarily been great so far this season. But I just think Bournemouth at home, Forest away, double game week, and then Crystal Palace at home, that is probably worth the gamble on Mason Mount beating out those other players that are around that £8 million price point. So I think I will stick with him. I just think it's worth, like I said, the gamble. And in terms of minutes in that Chelsea side, there are probably better attackers from an FPL point of view, but minutes matter. And the likes of Sterling, Aubameyang, Havertz, you just can't guarantee that they will be on the pitch. Whereas Mason Mount, I'd be surprised if he doesn't start at least 3, possibly even 4 of the next 4 fixtures for Chelsea, because he just always seems that important to whichever team he's playing for. I know he didn't necessarily start every single game for England, but for Chelsea, Graham Potter has played him a lot. So he's currently in, really just the fixtures play that one. Rashford's the same. I think the one kind of worry I have with Rashford is the first 3 fixtures are good for Man United. I know they then play Man City and Arsenal, and look, Man United will probably play a little bit deeper and they'll try and counter, and that's good for Rashford, I get that. But targeting Man City and Arsenal is not usually what I would do. So if I do want to get rid of him after 3 games, I'm not sure where I go if I've already got Martinelli. People will probably say players like Almiron, he could be an option, but that is just one kind of small concern I have over Rashford. But I think if I can, I want to get at least 1 Man United attacker in, possibly 2, just to target those first 3 fixtures. Plus Rashford's just been great so far this season, and I do think without those Ronaldo concerns and stuff like that, that may help Man United just do even better, right? At least I hope that's the case. We'll have to wait and see. So he's in as well. And I have gone back from De Bruyne to Salah. I think part of that is that game week 20 double game week not being guaranteed for Man City. And if that does get kind of called off or postponed again, I think I would prefer to have Salah over De Bruyne, like I have for most of this season. I know it hasn't worked out, but it's going to do that, it's going to work out at some point. I'm just hoping it's going to be right now. And if it gets to the point where they have got that double and I've got room for Kevin De Bruyne, I could just make that switch. So that's something I'm considering. But obviously, Kevin De Bruyne is never going to be at the forefront of my thoughts for captaincy because I've got Haaland as well. That's a spoiler, but come on, you knew I was going to have Haaland. So I look at the Liverpool fixtures and I just think Villa away and Leicester at home, Salah could definitely do better than De Bruyne. I'm not saying that Man City's next 2 fixtures are difficult, but I just think Salah's got every chance of outscoring De Bruyne. He's not been away for the World Cup. He's absolutely nailed on for minutes, and De Bruyne is going to start most games, but I'd be surprised if Salah misses any. Plus he's got penalties as well. It's just too good to turn down. And I just think Villa away, Leicester at home, Brentford away, I give Salah that, and then if I need De Bruyne for the double game week, that is where I make the move in game week 20. And that is also why I don't have Phil Foden in here as well, because I've got Cancelo, I've got Haaland. I want that easy switch to Kevin De Bruyne, because if you remember, there was a time at some point this season, I think it might have been when Son got the hat-trick, where I couldn't get De Bruyne in because I was already tripled up. So if I went for Foden over Mason Mount, that is basically saying that I'm not going for De Bruyne at all, and I just don't know if I want to leave myself in that position. So that's part of the reason why Foden is not in this team. If I decide that I'm happy to have Salah and just to go without De Bruyne completely, I may just put Foden in and hope that he starts most of the matches. But if not, I think that midfield looks pretty good. Rashford probably a shorter term option. There may be one player that people mention in the comments, which I'll give a little bit of time to now, is Trossard. I haven't talked about him enough. I think the Brighton fixtures are okay, and he's obviously done really well so far this season, despite all of us getting him in for that game week where he just didn't do anything. So if I had Rashford for the next 3 fixtures, I mean, Trossard's then got Liverpool at home, Leicester away, Bournemouth at home, Palace away, Fulham at home. Maybe that's the switch. I'm not saying that Rashford is 100% better than Trossard for these 3 fixtures, but I think I would rather target the games that Man United have, and then maybe I could look to switch after that. So that's something I could consider, but I don't think that Trossard is so good an option that I need him in straight away. So that's why I've not included him so far. So that's the defence and the midfield. Then it's forwards. So 2 of the forwards are fairly standard that you're going to see in a lot of drafts. One of them is Erling Haaland. I don't need to sit here and tell you why he's in the squad. He just is and will continue to be as long as he is fit and available. The other one is Mitrovic. Now, I know he's got this 4 yellow card situation hanging over him, but he's been so consistent at such a good price that I think it's worth taking that risk on him, especially when he's got the double game week. I just have to hope, like everyone else, that he doesn't get that 5th yellow card until after Fulham have already reached 19 games, so that he misses the 1 game suspension that he would have to serve. And I think with the fixtures that they've got, Fulham, like it's Palace away in 17, Southampton at home in 18, the double game week is Leicester away and Chelsea at home, then it's Newcastle away in game week 20. Let's say he got the yellow card either in the Southampton game or the Leicester game, he would miss one of Leicester or Chelsea in game week 19, depending on when the yellow card came. The fixtures are probably okay enough to warrant his inclusion anyway. I don't know if there's many better forward options out there for 6.8 million. Like some people might look at Martial, for example, but Mitrovic is absolutely nailed on, doesn't have those fitness concerns, is definitely on penalties as well, and possibly has a double game week. I just think he is a better option out and out. So I will go for him. The only kind of consideration we will have to make in game week 19 is who to captain. Now, I will always try and look for a double game week captain, but if he hasn't got that yellow card at that point and there is a risk of suspension for one of those games, then I probably won't captain him. And that comes back to some of the other choices in my team where Reece James and Mason Mount are in. A Chelsea player would then probably come into the consideration for captaincy, and it might be one of those two. So that's another reason I want to get at least 1 or 2 outfield Chelsea players in case that I don't want to captain Mitrovic in that game. The player that's maybe, I wouldn't say standard, he is probably in quite a few drafts, but maybe not as much as Haaland and Mitrovic, is Darwin Núñez. And I just think people have been a little bit down on Liverpool so far. They haven't necessarily always performed as we would expect them to, but I think in terms of expected goals generated so far this season, they're in 3rd place, not too far behind Arsenal and Man City. That is still a good attack. I'm not sure if I would necessarily kind of target them from a defensive point of view, like going for Trent or Robertson. Like, I think they're okay players to include, but I wouldn't go out of my way to be able to fit them in. But from an attacking sense, I still think they're looking pretty good. And around that £9 million price point, Darwin Núñez is probably really the only option. And with Jota out and Luis Diaz out as well, they don't have a huge amount of options in attack. Now, that doesn't mean that Núñez is going to start every game, because they could play like a 4-4-2 and have Carvalho and Elliott on the wider positions, then Salah and Firmino through the middle. But they've played a lot of the kind of 4-3-3 where Firmino plays a little bit deeper, and it's kind of Salah and Núñez as a front two. And I think they will continue to play that quite a bit. And he, again, it's not that he will start every single game, but his minutes will be better with those 2 players out in Diaz and Jota. So I kind of want to include him. I do wonder if I need to spend that money and whether or not it could be spent better elsewhere. Like if I do want to find that 0.5 million for Kepa that I spoke about earlier, downgrading Darwin Núñez is probably the easiest way to do it. If I then want to use some of those funds to do Mason Mount to a Foden or to a Saka, he is where I could get that money to do that move and the Kepa move as well. So Darwin Núñez is far from locked in, but as a short-term punt, I do kind of like him as an option. Like I look at the Liverpool fixtures and I think they're okay. I don't think they're special, but I think they're fine. I think Villa away, Leicester at home, Brentford away, definitely goals in those. Brighton away and Chelsea are maybe a little bit tougher, but overall the fixtures in a kind of short to medium term are fine, and we do have a second wildcard to use as well. I'm not sure when I'm going to use that yet, but we can switch the team around again. So I do like Darwin Núñez. If I was to downgrade him, I don't quite know what I would do. I am slightly tempted by the 3-5-2, but I know that Andreas Pereira is a really good bench option to call upon when needed. I think it would probably be Callum Wilson. I don't know if there's too many other forwards that I want to consider, like Martial, but I just always worry about those fitness concerns. Nketiah as well, but I think if I get him in, then Jesus comes back sooner than planned, or I want to get a second or even third Arsenal player in that's not Nketiah. It means shuffling things around a bit, and I'm just not sure about him either. So it kind of comes down to, in some positions, like default picks. If I've got the money to go for Núñez, I go for him. If I don't, I probably go down to Wilson or even a 3-5-2. So that's the draft as it stands. I'll do a team selection video before the Game Week 17 deadline just to try and refine things and maybe get closer to where the team is likely to be for that deadline on Boxing Day on the 26th of December. Loads more content to come this week. We'll have a deadline stream on the 26th as well, getting us into locking in those unlimited transfer squads. But if you have enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you again soon.